Hello Riders and Rangers, welcome to How to Fix Operation Overdrive. So for this series, we'll just have better vocals for the opening theme songs and have more plans to execute the ideas. Like, they have really good ideas. Overall, I like this series and I've enjoyed it so far. Thank you for watching and vote for what's next to fix. See you next time, Riders and Rangers. Just kidding. After watching this series, I think the overall story was decent. There could have been better pacing and execution, but it wasn't horrendous. It wasn't on the level of Power Rangers Samurai. Perhaps that's what happened after watching Power Rangers Samurai and the rest of the Neo Saban era. Like maybe my expectations just went so low. Well, from this I could see there is a lot of effort put into it. Even though I enjoyed the overall series, I was told to make something completely different. So here's my idea. Ready, Rangers? Overdrive, accelerate! We start off with a two-parter pilot. Episode 1, Kick into Overdrive. Part 1. A train is being attacked by minions that look like red lizards. On board are two rangers. The red and pink rangers of the season jumps into the action. Even though they defeated them all, the two rangers were barely able to stand against these reptilian humanoids. Pink was exhausted, and the red ranger says, "I think it's time for us to make a report to request for new recruits. These baddies are stronger than before." In a command bunker, we see a man in a meeting with the founder of the Department of Energy Residue, DER for short, and a few members over a Skype meeting. This man, Mr. Andrew Hartford, is the chief of management of the DER. According to DER, the delivery transport of debris and scraps that is radiated by morphing grid energies has never been such a pain until recently. Before it's just one or two mercenaries. Now this is the 15th time they have been ambushed by enemies this quarter. Luckily, nothing has been stolen yet. Founder of the DER says this is time to continue with Mr. Hartford's plan, to execute the completion of Operation Overdrive to Phase 3. Mr. Hartford says he has already executed the two prototypes of the security measures at the end of the recruitment process and has gotten 3 more candidates. All he needs to do is to interview them. With 5 of them on board, this will maximize the safety delivery of these radiated items. Yes, Operation Overdrive are basically bodyguards for garbage pickups. But many raccoons, opossums, bears, monkeys, rats, and seagulls are interested in burglarizing these garbage trucks. That's a summary of it, but dial that scenario up to 11. We'll come back to this later. Then we see the daily lives of our ranger candidates. At a weapons manufacturing, research, and development site, a robotic armed laser is on haywire. All the scientists are scrambling, and a young lady coolly walks to it and turns it off. The young girl called Rose tells the other doctors not to recalibrate her weapons without her consent. The professor asks if she will ever return to help them develop more weapons since she's the weapons expert. Rose responds, she has already been headhunted by another firm after she got snubbed from a promotion in this company. Rose only got back after an ex-colleague told her somebody who got her position was going to reverse engineer one of her old toys. She is in better places now. When a colleague asks what she is up to now, Rose jokingly says, same old weapons making and the side of babysitting. In the backyard, Spencer, the butler, approaches a training area. There was a young man in the backyard doing his martial arts in pole fighting. Rose enters the field and throws a towel at the man, which he catches without looking. Rose then throws a bottle of water, which he catches on the other side of a staff. Rose smirks. They found a precious Mac. The young man sighs and passes his training stuff to Spencer. Clearly, Mac does not want to be involved in this. He finally speaks up. I did not ask for this job, but it angers me so much seeing villains abusing the ranger powers. Rose warmly asks, if the stakes weren't that high, what would you have been doing? Mac chuckles. Treasure hunting. Rose grins. Just like your old man. On the racetrack, we see Ronnie, but rather than being the race car driver, Ronnie is the one leading her team of engineers changing the gears and tires. She is an expert at what she does. Of course, the car she's working on wins. At the end of the day, one of her colleagues asks, is this really her last day? She's a natural at this. Ronnie says she would like to try more different things. Her other colleagues ask, has she rested well enough to go back into racing? She did have 8 consecutive wins on Grand Prix racing before she became a mechanic. Ronnie says she would like to take up different engineerings as well. So she's a jack of all trades in any vehicles. While she's leaving, the receptionist passed a device for her. When she turns it on, it's a hologram from Mr. Hartford. Next, we are at a film set. Everyone was panicking about a stuntman getting injured, and they have no stand-ins to fill his role. One of the crew members, Daxlow, steps in to fill these shots. He's looked down by fellow crew members as the awkward nerd. Some calls him out for being a scout for landscape. He can't do stunts. But desperate, the director calls him in. Dax does his stunts flawlessly. But once his scenes are done, everyone ignores him and moves on to the next scene. as Dax tries to get high fives and nobody responds. When Dax goes to his trailer, we can see that he is a geography and geology expert who knows a lot about film locations and scouting. We see the same device Ronnie got. Dax holds the device, seems like he has seen the message before, and says to himself, maybe I might get more recognition in this job instead. In a highly secured bank vault, Will is doing his usual heist. He was able to access the vault without triggering any alarms. When he's finished, he has a meeting with the bank manager. He describes all the flaws in the security in the bank and how to improve it. Basically, he's a consultant for security measures. The bank's security division supervisor thanks him and gives his usual pay. Back in his car, Will smirks as he sends all the bank's security data to a third party. Will is a questionable character, and the mysterious third party asks if she has been scouted by Hartford. Will shows the mysterious device that Ronnie and Dax also received to the third party. Later, the three Ranger candidates show up in a grand mansion. It is Mr. Hartford's home. Spencer leads the three into the mansion and enters a bunker way below the house. When they enter the underground base, Mr. Hartford greets them and explains what Operation Overdrive is about. He shows them footages of old Power Rangers fighting monsters, both in suit and in their Zords. The DER's job is to clean up the debris to protect the public. Ronnie interjects. She thought it was hard to do something more than just being a cleanup crew, more than just being a janitor. Mr. Hartford responds that Operation Overdrive is the security division of DER. Basically, there are 5 candidates chosen to be the protectors of deliveries. They're hired to safeguard the shipping of dangerous items, where some would pay a lot to put their hands on it. Once the items are inside the safe houses, they no longer need to be defended since the safe houses have powerful defense forces to fend off intruders. We'll ask, how can these 5 security guards protect the delivery? Mr. Hartford explains, the 5 protectors will become Overdrive Rangers before they have trouble sending out energy remotely. The safe house's defense grid has a huge amount of energy directly charging to it, but now they've figured out a way to power up morphers by charging them wirelessly. Ronnie asks, why not just raise an army of Overdrive Rangers? Mr. Hartford says, unfortunately they don't have enough energy to power an army wirelessly. Also, not every person could withstand this energy. The optimal number of people to be in the security team would be 5 maximum. And looking at all the current 5 candidates and their physiology and psychological makeup, they're not going to be affected by the residual energies. Mr. Hartford says if he wasn't affected by the energy, he would have become a ranger as well. Dax asks, how dangerous can the debris from the Power Ranger battles and sword fights be? Mr. Hartford recalls what he has experienced in a flashback. 12 years ago, a young Andrew Hartford, also played by the same actor as Mac Hartford, is out on an excavation trip with his family. In a cave, Mr. Hartford just found an emerald jewel part of the Thunder Saber of the Thunder Megazord. After successfully retrieving it and escaping a cave collapse, he brings it back to his large tent base and shows it to his wife and 13-year-old son, Mac. While enjoying the sight of his newest prize with his son, as he places it next to 5 pieces of crystals used to power the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Megazord, his wife and him reminiscing about the Hartford past. Since the debut of the Power Rangers, he has changed his collection from ancient relics to Ranger-related parts. Mr. Hartford is a world-renowned entrepreneur, young but well-known archaeologist who turned into a treasure hunter. He built a fortune from it. As one man's trash is another man's treasure, he starts collecting Zord pieces for his own entertainment instead. Suddenly, Mr. Hartford receives a phone call from the founder of the DER. He exits the tent for better phone reception. On the phone, the founder warns him about his collection, which is illegal and highly dangerous because of the radiation energy from the Morphin Grid. Mr. Hartford sees this as another threat so he could be recruited into the DER. Back inside the tent, the emerald and the energy crystal starts glowing. Mrs. Hartford was a bit confused and young Mac touches the Tyrannosaurus crystal. A red energy glows around the boy and the mother is terrified. As Mr. Hartford is speaking to the founder in a sarcastic and snarky tone, we can see that he's too smart for his own good and he has a laid-back sense of humor. The founder explains the dangers of harboring materials that has been access to the Morphin Grid's radiation and needs to be properly irradiated. If not, it would be catastrophic. Mr. Hartford responds that these destroyed Megazords has been disabled for nearly 12 years already, and there are no signs of any dangers. The founder retorts, it is exactly why it has to be irradiated. The residual energy without proper equipment is erratic, basically a ticking time bomb. Then a mysterious figure approaches the back door of the tent and Mrs. Hartford grabs her son and places him behind her, shielding him from the intruder. While outside, Mr. Hartford tells the founder he's only interested in fairy adventures, not being a Power Rangers maid, and he jokes about all DER members dressing in Power Rangers maid costumes, which one of his companies can help manufacture if they need any. Without warning, the tent explodes behind him in an eerie green energy, and the tent collapses into a hole that the energy has created. Mr. Hartford runs towards the tent as it collapses. He drops to his knees as his family disappears in front of him. That's the time when he became part of the DER. After recounting his tragedy, Mr. Hartford recollects himself and turns on his computer monitor. We then are introduced to Skin, the alpha of the season. He's basically an avatar and speaker of the current overseer of the DER. Skin tells the group that they will not only be in charge of the security of delivery, but finding these debris as well. Their trackers will show the hazardous levels of the debris. Items radiated by the morphing grid energies are known as potential residue, energized chirality, and ominous unknown subjects. Precious for the acronym. Ronnie asks what chirality is in these terms. Skin responds, chirality in here basically means the corruption of an object into something else. The higher the precious level is, the higher the chance of its energy will be transmuting objects into monsters, called chiralites. It then plays MMPR Lord Zed's staff of transforming day-to-day items into monsters. They were then shown the villains of the season, the foot soldiers and monsters so far, Moltor and Fluoris's men. But it's not just chiralites they're worried about. They're worried about more and more looters and pillagers interested in collecting the debris that found across the world for their energies. Dax says, powers cannot be created nor destroyed. Where do they store such dangerous energy? Skin says the residual radiated energy recycled into Mr. Hartford's own morphing grid called the Morph Intranet. They've been collecting residual energies from the debris for the past 14 years, finally enough to power 5 of their own Rangers, the defense grid of the safe houses, and the mechs. Hearing the word mechs, Ronnie was super excited. Dax then asked to play the Moltor footage again. After they see the image of Moltor, Dax snaps his fingers and asks, doesn't that look like the original Power Rangers Megazord? Mr. Hartford says, Moltor is actually an example of a chiralite of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Megazord, and the foot soldiers, lava lizards, are chiralites of the Dragonzord. Mr. Hartford says he's not going to make them do anything they feel uncomfortable, and if they are not interested in the security occupation, they may leave. All the Rangers agree to join in and to take their morphers. Dax says these people have to be stopped. Will and Ronnie nod in agreement. Suddenly, Mr. Hartford receives a call from Mac. Mac says, Rose located the precious, but I cannot secure the area. Are we going to get those reinforcements? Oh, hi guys! We see some white foot soldiers closing in Mac's point of view camera. Skin exclaims, these guys again. We don't know which side they are from, but they have been ransacking our shipping last week. Mr. Hartford dispatches the 3 Rangers to aid Mac and Rose to retrieve it. Dax was given the gyro driver to pilot. Mr. Hartford notices Dax was a bit overwhelmed by the Zord, so he says, your resume says that you've flown the helicopter Robinson R-44 model, right? Dax nodded. Got my lesson since 17. Mr. Hartford gave him an encouraging slap on the shoulder. Same controls, same aerodynamics, it'll be like riding a bike to you. In Mexico, the team arrives thanks to Dax's flying skills. They drop off in the remains of the sunken Mayan temple. The team tries to fight their forces unmorphed, but they're struggling against these white soldiers, called Chillers. Then this episode ends. On the next episode, called Kick into Overdrive Part 2, with the Rangers surrounded and easily taken down by the foot soldiers, Mac orders the Rangers to follow his lead. And it is time. The 5 morph into Power Rangers Operation Overdrive. Through the intercom, Mr. Hartford tells the team to summon their own weapons and they will be transported to them. Each Ranger shows off their individual fighting skills and weapons, while Mr. Hartford says Spencer did a fantastic job in choosing their weapons for them. Mike is the Red Ranger and uses his Drive Lance weapon. He's very well trained since Spencer knows he has been practicing staff fighting for a long time. Will is the Black Ranger and he summons his Drive Slammer. Mr. Hartford noted Will used hammers to slam tires as his regular workout routine, which was a good pick, and he has also used that kind of workout routine when he was a gym instructor. Dax is the Blue Ranger and he uses his Drive Vortex, perfect diversion, to perform some stunts to confuse his enemies before beating them into submission. Ronnie is the Yellow Ranger and uses the Drive Claw and is a straightforward fighter. Spencer says it's actually coincidental. He didn't expect her to use it as a weapon. It's used for digging. Rose is a Pink Ranger and she uses her Drive Geyser and easily blasts her opponent. Since she was training to be an Olympian shooter, she is basically a dead eye. It's admirable she gave it all up to work on her 5th PhD. After clearing the Whitefoot soldiers, the team scouts the area and picks up a signal where the Precious was located. Will asks, didn't the department exist all this time collecting debris? Isn't it already all collected? Why do they still need to travel across the world to find Precious? Rose explains, when the dangerous debris is not irradiated immediately, the chiral energy could produce a defense mechanism to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Sometimes, the energy may not stay with its origins. It might move and bind into something else. Its mystical energies will seal itself away. Energies could travel to locations with existing temples or booby traps to protect itself by binding itself with another item. The energy could teleport itself to the closest location that it sees most fit to be hidden, sometimes even inside ancient tombs. Over 14 years of chiral energy from the excess use of the morphing grid energy, they have already traveled across the world without them knowing. But the more hazardous the item is, the more well hidden it will be. But it will leave some clues for its actual owner to find it. After retrieving these artifacts, they need to be processed in order to denature the chirality. After sending Ronnie and Will to enter an underwater chamber, which has a weak energy signal, Ronnie tries to scan for Precious, but finds nothing. Ronnie sees a button and activates a few traps. Quick to his wit, Will quickly disables all the traps. The two completes a puzzle which activates a grand chain reaction which lifts the ancient temple and traps the two. Mac uses his dump truck to rescue them. Being rescued, Will says he knew all about Aztec temples and says it is easier to excavate the Precious when it's on land level. Ronnie quickly corrects him that Aztec and Mayans are two different civilizations. Mike says maybe the New Rangers should stay behind, but Will runs in and says the New Rangers will be retrieving the Precious first, and Ronnie runs behind him. After a few more traps, the team comes after Will getting the Precious as the rock bridge over a magma pit starts collapsing. Reaching the Precious, Dax scans it and says the Precious is definitely dangerous, and with the hazard level over 80%. When he reaches for it, the Precious flies out and creates many duplicates of itself. Ronnie tries to reach for one, but Dax knocks her out of the way before she could, but even the slight touch made the decoy explode. Ronnie asks how did Dax know. Dax says he recognizes that move. It's similar to the Wind Ninja Academy of duplication. We will come back to this later. Rose concludes all the decoys are bombs except for Tomb Raiders. Max snaps his fingers and realizes its energy is a residue of the Aquatar Ranger power. That's why he chooses to hide underwater to await for Aquatar Rangers to retrieve it. Mac punches one of the decoys, which leads to a chain reaction of decoys slamming into each other. As all the decoys explode, Mac says since these decoys are made from the ninja powers of the Precious, it wouldn't be affected by its own ninjitty attacks. The real Precious remains standing, floating over the magma pit. While everyone was trying to figure out how to get it, Will launches a zipline and swings across the magma pit. Before Will could gloat, Furious, an ice-themed villain, and his minions arrives and demands the Precious. The Chillers attack them, throwing Will off the cliff, and the monsters escape with the Precious. The other Rangers swing across the magma, and Mac sends the others after Furious. He will retrieve Will. Mac parachutes down to Will, trapped on the ledge. Outside, Furious and the Chillers reach a set of ruins. Furious takes the Precious with him. Dax, Rose, and Ronnie run after them. Furious tells the Rangers they do not know what power this Precious possesses. He then sends Chillers after the Rangers as well. While fighting the Chillers, Mac and Will join the fight with the other Rangers. After taking out all the Chillers, Mac blasts the Precious out of Furious's hands as he was trying to steal the energy within it. Will catches the Precious. Angered, Fleur uses his energy as collected from the Precious to create a monster out of the temple ruins. Fleur demands the monster to destroy them. It tries to attack the Rangers, but they dodge just in time. Watching this over the monitor, Mr. Hartford tells the group to summon their Drive Max swords. He was surprised to see a giant monster. Spencer says, "Well, it is Power Rangers, it'd be strange not to have a Megazord battle." Mr. Hartford says he built those giant vehicles for traveling, excavating, and rescuing. These aren't designed for fighting, only the suits were. Spencer asks, not even the giant robot is for destroying King Kong-sized monsters? Mr. Hartford is worried, since the robot is designed for huge excavations rather than a monster fight. Sure, it could withstand landslides, tsunamis, and lava, but there are a lot of vulnerabilities. Calling for the Drive Max swords, we will have an interesting bit. Turns out, Ronnie's Zord is supposed to be the speed driver, and Will's Zord is the dozer driver. Even though an ex-race car driver, Ronnie refuses to use that Zord, and Will gladly switches it with her. Does she have a phobia towards race cars now? They form the Drive Max Megazord, but the Titans are equally matched. Spencer says perhaps they should start arming themselves. It was hard to just use the shovel and pickaxe to fight. Thinking on his feet, Will writes a program on the spot to turn the shovel and pickaxe into a saber. Then, the Drive Max Megazord was able to destroy the monster. As the team delivers the Precious to their safe house, Mr. Hartford congratulates the team for their success. However, when Mr. Hartford scans it, its hazardous level reading is now 0. Dax wonders if Furious has swapped it with a fake. But Mr. Hartford says this is the ancient heart amulet, no doubt. Somehow, the chirality has been removed. Will asks, is it possible that the chirality has switched to another area again? Mr. Hartford says that it's highly unlikely because chiral energy takes a long time to move to a different location. There's a chance that Flores has already stole the chiral energy. Operation Overdrive should remain cautious, as this means that Flores may possess the powers of the Power Rangers. As the team is dismissed for the day, Will secretly makes a phone call to the same mysterious third party. Will says he has removed the chirality energy and has sent to them wirelessly using the tracker. The mysterious voice asks if he has deleted its history. Will responds, "Way ahead of you." Thank you for joining us in this video on the pitch for How to Fix Operation Overdrive. I hope you guys enjoyed it. What did you think about this video? Did you enjoy it? Do you have any questions? Let me know below and don't forget to like and subscribe. More will come. See you next time, Riders and Rangers.